The sky above the planet Saturn was a swirl of dark clouds, streaked with flashes of green and orange as artillery fire lit the horizon. Smoke curled from shattered buildings and the sharp scent of ozone filled the air. In the command tower high above the battlefield, the alien Empress Zira stood tall, her eyes glowing faintly as she surveyed the chaos below. Her soldiers were supposed to hold this outpost at all costs, but instead they were retreating in disorder. Panic had spread faster than the invading human forces. Zira's mandibles clicked sharply, a sound of both irritation and disbelief.
"Why do they run?"
she demanded, her voice echoing across the empty command hall. Her aides looked uneasy, unwilling to answer. "They are trained for war," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "They are supposed to obey, and yet they flee." Her eyes fell on a figure standing alone on the scorched battlefield, a human, small, fragile-looking, but unmoving. Captain Alex Wren had no heavy armor like the alien soldiers, no shields, no energy rifles, just a simple combat suit, scorched and worn from earlier skirmishes. And yet, he stood his ground, holding nothing but a sidearm and an unshakable resolve. The Empress leaned closer, her curiosity sharpened. She had heard tales of human courage, of their unusual persistence in battle, but she had never seen it herself. And now here was proof, one human alone defying dozens of her trained soldiers and even more of the invaders. On the ground, Alex moved with quiet precision. Every step was deliberate. He dodged incoming fire, using the ruins of walls and collapsed structures for cover. When an alien soldier stumbled near him, panicked and shaking, Alex didn't attack. Instead, he shouted clear, calm instructions. "Hold your position. Cover the left flank." His voice was steady, confident. It carried over the chaos. Some of the fleeing soldiers paused, unsure why a human would dare speak to them and even more unsure whether they should obey. Alex's eyes scanned the battlefield. He wasn't just reacting. He was anticipating. Where the enemy would strike next, which soldiers would falter, which path would lead to safety. He saw it all. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The Empress watched from above, fascinated. Her soldiers were fleeing, abandoning their posts, yet this human, small and fragile by comparison, moved like a force of nature. He wasn't stronger or faster than them. He didn't have the firepower. But he had something far more dangerous: courage and quick thinking. A sudden explosion rocked the ground nearby. Dust and debris filled the air. A group of soldiers screamed as their formation collapsed. Most of Zira's troops fled in terror, tumbling over one another in a desperate rush for safety. But Alex didn't move backward. He pivoted, took cover behind a broken wall, and returned fire with careful aim. Every shot was deliberate, every move measured. One alien commander, panicked and confused, ran past him. Alex grabbed the creature by the arm, pulling it down behind cover. "Don't run," he barked. "We fight together or we die alone." The commander froze, fear etched across its face. No human had ever spoken to him this way. And yet there was no threat in Alex's words, only determination. Slowly, hesitantly, the commander nodded and raised his weapon again. Above them, Zira's eyes softened, just slightly. She could feel it. This human was different. Dangerous, yes, but in a way that didn't rely on sheer force. He relied on his mind, on instinct, on bravery. She had seen strength in others before, giants, warriors bred for centuries in battle. But none like this. None who could inspire even a momentary pause in her soldiers' panic. Alex moved forward, using a narrow path between collapsed towers. He didn't run. He didn't panic. Every step was careful but fast. He reached another group of fleeing soldiers and knelt beside them. "Listen to me," he shouted, his voice cutting through the noise of battle. "We can still hold them. Use the walls, cover each other. Fight with your heads, not just your weapons." For a few heartbeats, no one moved. Then, one by one, they began to follow his instructions. It was small progress, but enough. The soldiers formed a tighter group. Their retreat slowed. Their fear didn't vanish, but it was now tempered with hope. And hope came from one simple source: a human who refused to run. Meanwhile, on her command platform, Zira activated her communication link and spoke to Alex almost unconsciously. "Why do you fight alone, human?" Her voice was calm, commanding, yet tinged with curiosity. Alex paused, recognizing the strange voice through his headset. "Because someone has to," he replied simply. "Someone has to stand when everyone else runs. You can't win a war by hiding." The Empress blinked, taken aback. His words were human, simple, Straightforward, but filled with meaning. He wasn't bragging. He wasn't challenging her. He was stating a fact, and in that statement was courage she had rarely seen. A volley of enemy fire erupted nearby, sending debris flying. Alex rolled behind a fallen column, then rose and fired back, using the terrain to his advantage. Every movement was calculated, every action purposeful. One by one he began to turn the tide of the battlefield, not by overwhelming force but by precision and sheer determination. Sierra leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. She had faced powerful enemies before, forces that outnumbered her armies 10 to 1, and yet there was something different about this human. He moved with unpredictability, intelligence, and a fearlessness that defied logic. She had always valued strategy and strength, but perhaps courage, true courage, was the greatest weapon of all. As the battle continued, Alex noticed a squad of alien soldiers cornered by enemy fire. Without hesitation, he sprinted across open ground, dodging plasma blasts, and reached them. "Follow me," he shouted. They hesitated for only a moment before trusting him. Alex led them through a narrow passageway between crumbling walls, guiding them to relative safety. By the time he returned to the center of the battlefield, the fleeing soldiers had begun to regroup. They were tired, scared, but they were standing. And standing behind them like a shadow of determination was the human who refused to flee. Syra's gaze lingered on him. She saw more than a single human. She saw a force of will that could inspire even the most fearful. She saw a symbol, an idea that strength wasn't measured by size, weaponry, or numbers. Sometimes it was measured by the courage to stand alone. For the first time, the Empress felt a strange sense of admiration. She had ruled an empire for centuries, yet never had she seen such a combination of intellect, bravery, and instinct. Perhaps this human, this fragile creature in a simple suit, held more power than any of her elite soldiers. The enemy, seeing the unexpected resistance, faltered. Their coordinated strike fell into chaos as Alex's presence disrupted their formation. For a brief moment, the battlefield was quiet, except for the sounds of clashing debris and scattered cries. The human had created a ripple of change with nothing but courage and cleverness. Zira's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Perhaps," she whispered to herself, "this one is worth protecting." From below, Alex scanned the battlefield, unaware of the Empress's attention. He focused only on the task at hand, keeping her safe, holding the line, and proving that one human could make a difference where an entire army had faltered. And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the smoke turned orange with its last rays, the truth became clear. Fear could break many, but courage, the kind that stood when everyone else ran, could inspire even the hopeless to fight. Alex Wren stood his ground, and for the first time, the alien Empress realized that perhaps humans were capable of far more than anyone in her empire had ever imagined. The battlefield had quieted, but only slightly. Smoke still hung heavy in the air, and the distant sounds of scrambling soldiers and collapsing structures echoed across the horizon. Captain Alex Wren stood atop a low ridge, scanning the terrain. His eyes were sharp, his breathing steady, and every muscle in his body ready for action. Below him, the alien soldiers he had helped rally were still uncertain. Many had never fought alongside a human before, and even fewer had ever been guided by one. Some glanced nervously at Alex, while others whispered among themselves, hesitant but curious. Yet despite their fear, they followed his instructions, moving in tighter formations and holding the line where before they had scattered. High above, Empress Zira observed from her hovering command platform. Her glowing eyes followed every motion of the human, every interaction he had with her soldiers. She had descended closer to the battlefield to witness his methods firsthand, curious not only about his combat skill, but also about his strange ability to inspire others. Alex didn't notice her yet. His focus was on the approaching enemy forces. Though they had been slowed, they were regrouping, and another wave of attackers would arrive soon. Alex's mind worked quickly, assessing every possible angle, every potential hazard, and every way to turn the enemy's strength against them. He spotted a narrow canyon to the left, a path that the enemy would likely attempt to use to flank his position. He moved swiftly to intercept. "Soldiers, follow me!" he called, his voice calm but firm. "We're going to use the terrain. Stay close. Watch each other's backs." The soldiers hesitated for only a moment before trusting him. They moved with him through the canyon, their movements growing more coordinated with each step. Alex used the walls of rock to his advantage, climbing to higher positions to scout the enemy's approach and setting small traps along the path. Rocks poised to fall, narrow ledges for ambush. He thought of everything, not with weapons alone but with strategy. Meanwhile, Zira had landed nearby, disguised to avoid startling him. Her form shimmered with a subtle energy field, and she observed quietly from the shadows. She wanted to see him in action up close, to understand what made this human so different from her own soldiers. What she saw amazed her. He wasn't just brave. He was thoughtful, creative, and unafraid of danger in ways her soldiers rarely were. Alex heard the faint movement of the enemy before he saw them. They were approaching through the canyon in a line, confident in their superior numbers. He crouched behind a rock outcropping, signaling silently to the soldiers behind him. They moved quickly to follow his plan, spreading out and preparing for an ambush. As the enemy advanced, Alex fired precise shots, each one aimed not to kill, but to confuse and delay. Rocks tumbled from the canyon walls, forcing the attackers to scatter. Panic rippled through them, their formations breaking down. The human soldiers, inspired by his calmness, pressed forward with renewed determination. From the shadows, Zira's glowing eyes tracked every movement. She had led countless armies, witnessed many battles, but never had she seen anything like this. The human did not rely on raw strength or overwhelming firepower. He relied on quick thinking, observation, and the ability to predict what others would do before they did it. It was a strange, terrifying, and yet fascinating power. One of the alien soldiers stumbled, nearly falling into the path of an incoming enemy. Alex reacted instantly, grabbing the soldier's arm and pulling him to safety. "Stay alert," he shouted. "Trust your instincts, but trust me too." The soldier nodded, still shaking, but something had changed. Fear was no longer the only force guiding his actions. There was also hope, sparked by the human who refused to flee. The battle grew more chaotic as more enemy forces entered the canyon. Alex moved like a shadow, weaving between rocks, setting small traps, and guiding his soldiers with a steady voice. His strategy was simple but effective. Use the environment, force the enemy into tight spaces, and make them waste energy trying to outmaneuver him. Every step he took was calculated. Every decision mattered. From her position above, Zira felt a strange sense of admiration. She had always valued strength, speed, and training above all else. But here was proof that courage and intelligence could rival even the most advanced technology. She began to wonder if perhaps humans possessed qualities that her own species had never fully understood. The enemy, growing frustrated, attempted a direct assault. They rushed forward, weapons blazing, expecting to overwhelm the human and his small group of soldiers. Alex waited, timing each movement perfectly. When they entered the narrowest part of the canyon, he triggered a trap, causing rocks to tumble down and block their path. Panic set in among the attackers, and the human soldiers seized the opportunity to push back. Despite their smaller numbers, Alex's forces gained ground. Every successful move inspired the soldiers further, their fear replaced with confidence. They began to fight not only for survival but for something greater, a belief that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could hold their ground. Zira's curiosity deepened. She had seen humans before, of course, but rarely in battle. Most were considered fragile, easy to defeat, and incapable of leading armies. Yet here was one who did all that and more. She couldn't deny it. He was extraordinary. Suddenly, a group of enemy reinforcements appeared from behind a ridge, threatening to encircle Alex and his soldiers. Without hesitation, he adapted. "Change positions. Use the high ground," he commanded. The soldiers moved quickly, following his instructions. Alex climbed to a higher ledge, gaining a clear view of the approaching enemies. He assessed the situation, quickly forming a new plan. Using the rocks and terrain, he set up a series of traps to slow the reinforcements. Then, with careful precision, he directed his soldiers to strike at weak points, creating confusion among the enemy ranks. The strategy worked. The attackers faltered, unsure of how to proceed, while Alex's small force maintained order and control. For a moment, the battlefield seemed frozen. Then, slowly, the enemy began to retreat, recognizing that brute force alone could not defeat the human and his allies. Alex's soldiers cheered quietly, their fear replaced with relief and admiration. From her vantage point, Zira allowed herself a small smile. The human had not only survived, but had turned the tide of the battle in a way that her most skilled soldiers could not. He had used his mind as a weapon, his courage as a shield, and his determination as armor. After the retreat, Alex gathered his soldiers together. "Good work," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We held the line, but this is only the beginning. Stay alert, stay smart, and remember you are stronger than you think." The soldiers nodded, feeling a sense of pride they had never known before. For the first time, many of them believed that they could stand against overwhelming odds. Zira descended to the edge of the battlefield, revealing herself to Alex and his soldiers. The soldiers froze, unsure how to react to the presence of their Empress. Alex, however, simply stood and nodded respectfully. "You are the human they call Alex Wren?" Zira asked, her voice smooth but commanding. "I am," Alex replied simply, "and I will stand as long as there is a reason to fight." Zira studied him closely. "You are unlike any human I have seen. Brave, intelligent, and remarkably steady in the face of danger." Alex shrugged lightly. "I don't know about remarkable. I just do what needs to be done." "Humans rarely act this way," Zira said softly. "They usually flee or hide, yet you inspire others to stand. Tell me, why do you fight?" Alex thought for a moment before answering. "Because someone has to. Someone has to protect those who can't protect themselves. Someone has to hold the line when everyone else runs. That's what I do." Zira nodded slowly, her glowing eyes studying him with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Perhaps you are worth more than I realized." The battlefield quieted further as both sides regrouped. Alex knew the fight was not over. There would be more battles, more enemies, and more challenges ahead. But for now, he had proven that courage and intelligence could rival strength in numbers. And the alien Empress, who had watched so many flee in fear, had finally seen something she had never expected. A human who could stand firm, unyielding, and capable of inspiring even the most timid soldiers to fight. For the first time, Zira considered a thought she had never entertained before. Perhaps humans were not weak. Perhaps humans, when faced with overwhelming odds, could achieve greatness in ways her empire had never imagined. And Captain Alex Wren stood at the center of it all, unaware of the deep impression he had made on the ruler of an entire alien empire, ready to face whatever challenges came next with courage and determination. The sun had barely risen over the alien capital of Kareth when the first warning sirens echoed through the streets. From her command platform atop the spire of the royal citadel, Empress Zira observed the approaching forces. Unlike previous skirmishes, this attack was massive, coordinated, relentless, and threatening to breach the city's defenses entirely. The alien soldiers panicked at the sight of the enormous enemy fleet and the marching ground troops. Zira's eyes narrowed. She had already seen the courage of one human, Captain Alex Wren, on the battlefield, and she knew that if anyone could turn this tide, it would be him. She activated the communication link, sending a clear signal to the human. "Alex Wren," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "Your assistance is required immediately. The city faces overwhelming odds. Can you lead a counter-operation?" Alex stood in the command tent reviewing maps and supply logs. He didn't hesitate. "I will do what I can," he replied, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "Tell me the key points of the city defenses. I need to know where the enemy will strike first." Zira outlined the city's main entry points, highlighting vulnerable walls and choke points. Alex listened carefully, taking mental notes. Unlike the aliens, he did not rely solely on strength or numbers. He relied on strategy, imagination, and the unexpected use of terrain. Within minutes, he was on the streets, leading a small squad of both humans and alien soldiers. The soldiers whispered among themselves, some doubting his abilities at first. But as Alex gave precise instructions, directing them to take positions behind barricades, narrow alleys, and collapsed buildings, their fear slowly transformed into cautious confidence. "Form 2 lines," Alex commanded, pointing to a narrow street. "The first line will slow them. The second line will flank from the rooftops. Watch each other's backs. Move quietly, move fast." The alien soldiers followed, some still uneasy, but none dared question him. His presence had a strange effect, calming, inspiring, and yet demanding absolute focus. As the enemy entered the city, Alex sprang into action. He used the high walls, crumbling rooftops, and hidden passageways to outmaneuver the larger forces. Rockets fired by the attackers were dodged with clever timing, while narrow streets created natural choke points that slowed the advance. Every movement Alex made was deliberate, calculated to maximize impact while minimizing casualties. Sira hovered nearby, observing. She had never seen a strategist like this human. She had led wars, commanded fleets, and trained thousands of soldiers. Yet Alex's methods were unlike anything she had encountered. His mind worked differently, bending the battlefield to his will without brute force. In one narrow street, a group of alien soldiers froze, terrified by a sudden enemy push. Alex darted forward, standing in the middle of the path. His eyes locked with the soldiers, and his voice rang out clear and commanding. "Move! Don't stop! Trust your instincts, but follow me." The soldiers hesitated, then followed his lead, their fear replaced by determination. The enemy advanced, expecting to overwhelm them, but Alex had already set up a trap. Barricades hidden in the alleyway toppled at the right moment, slowing the attackers. Alex's small force struck with precision, forcing the enemy to retreat in disarray. The battle continued, wave after wave of enemy troops attempting to breach the city. Alex moved like a shadow among the ruins, appearing where he was needed most, guiding soldiers, setting traps, and exploiting the enemy's overconfidence. His human ingenuity turned each threat into an opportunity, each attack into a lesson for his allies. From her position on a high balcony, Zyra felt a mix of pride and astonishment. Her soldiers were learning from him, slowly understanding that strategy and courage could outweigh sheer numbers. Even the alien advisors, skeptical at first, began to recognize his genius. "Empress," one advisor whispered nervously. "This human, he does things we never could have imagined. He turns defeat into victory with nothing but his mind and courage." Zyra's glowing eyes softened slightly. "He is extraordinary," she replied. "Watch closely and learn. There is much to gain from this human." As the day progressed, Alex noticed a group of enemy commanders coordinating a major push toward the central citadel, where Zyra's personal guard was stationed. Without hesitation, he devised a bold plan. He divided his small force into several squads, each with specific instructions to intercept the commanders. Using narrow alleys, hidden corridors, and the city's vertical architecture, he outflanked the enemy, isolating them from their main forces. The plan worked perfectly. The enemy commanders were captured or forced to retreat, their troops disorganized and panicked. Alex's small squad had achieved what an entire army had failed to do: turn chaos into control. Zyra descended closer to the battlefield, allowing her soldiers to see her presence. Her appearance alone boosted morale, but when combined with Alex's leadership, the soldiers found renewed courage. The previously terrified troops began to fight with precision and confidence, inspired by both their Empress and the human who refused to yield. During a brief lull in the fighting, Alex assessed the situation. The enemy had been slowed but not eliminated. Supplies were limited and reinforcements were expected. He turned to his group of alien soldiers. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "We have the advantage of knowing this city better than they do. Use it, move silently, strike with purpose, protect each other, and we will hold the line." The soldiers nodded, their fear replaced by resolve. They trusted him now, not because of his size or strength, but because he had shown them what courage could do. Zyra watched from above, studying him. She had seen humans before, but none like this. Alex was not a mindless warrior. He was a strategist, a leader, and an inspiration. He had turned a desperate situation into a controlled battle, using ingenuity, courage, and human intuition. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city streets, Alex prepared for the next wave of enemy forces. He knew the fight was far from over. But he also knew something important. Courage was contagious, and as long as he stood firm, others would follow. The first of the reinforcements arrived just as Alex had anticipated. This time he had prepared a series of coordinated ambushes along the main streets. The enemy marched confidently, expecting to crush the defenders, but Alex's squad struck from hidden positions, collapsing barricades and creating confusion. The alien soldiers, emboldened by Alex's presence, moved with precision. Their fear had been replaced by trust in him and in themselves. They fought not only to survive, but to protect their Empress and the city they called home. Zyra hovered above the battlefield, her expression unreadable but her eyes bright. She had never imagined that one human could inspire such loyalty and bravery in her soldiers. She realized, with a sense of awe, that humans might possess a kind of strength that even her elite warriors could not match, a combination of courage, intelligence, and instinct that made them unpredictable and, in many ways, unstoppable. By nightfall, the enemy had been forced to retreat. The city stood, battered but unbroken, thanks in large part to the human who had led the defense. Alex gathered his soldiers, exhausted but resolute. "Good work," he said simply. "We held them back today, but the fight is not over. Rest, regroup, and remember what we can do when we stand together." The alien soldiers cheered quietly, their fear transformed into pride. They had learned a valuable lesson, that courage and strategy could turn the tide of battle, even against overwhelming odds. Syra descended from her hovering platform, her glowing eyes fixed on Alex. She regarded him with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "You are unlike any human I have known," she said softly. "Your courage and intelligence have saved this city. Tell me, how do you do it?" Alex shook his head slightly, a small smile on his face. "I don't know if I can explain it. I just do what needs to be done. I stand when others fall and I fight when others flee. That's all I know." Zira considered his words carefully. She had always valued strength and strategy above all else, but she now understood that courage could be just as powerful, if not more so. Alex Wren was not just a human. He was a symbol of hope, of determination, and of what it meant to stand firm when everything seemed lost. The Empress nodded slowly. "Perhaps humans are capable of more than I ever imagined," she whispered. And as night fell over the capital, Alex prepared for the battles yet to come, unaware of the deep impression he had made on the ruler of an entire empire. For he was more than a soldier. He was a beacon of courage, a strategist without equal, and a human who refused to flee. The city slept uneasy, but for the first time, its inhabitants had hope. And that hope was embodied in one small human who stood tall in the face of overwhelming odds. The next morning, the city of Kareth was quiet, but the calm was only temporary. Captain Alex Wren moved through the streets with purpose, checking on the soldiers who had survived the previous day's battle. His presence had become a symbol of hope for the troops, both human and alien. Wherever he went, soldiers straightened their posture and renewed their focus, ready to fight another day. Empress Zira had remained in the citadel overnight, observing from above. She could not hide her curiosity or her concern. The human had proven himself extraordinary, but even the bravest warrior could tire, and tomorrow would bring an even greater challenge. Intelligence had reported that a new enemy force, far larger and more ruthless, was marching toward the city. Alex gathered his small command group, a mixture of humans and alien soldiers. They sat around a worn map, the layout of the city and its surrounding terrain carefully marked. He studied the points of vulnerability, the narrow alleys, the rooftops, and the defensive walls. His mind worked faster than anyone else in the room. "The enemy is bigger than before," Alex said, his voice steady. "They will try to hit us where we are weakest, and they will not hesitate to take risks. We need a plan that uses the city itself against them. We fight smart, not just hard." An alien officer shifted nervously. "But Captain, even with your strategies, their numbers—" Alex cut him off gently but firmly. "Numbers alone do not win battles. Strategy, courage, and timing win battles. Stay with me, follow instructions, and you'll see." The soldiers listened closely, realizing that Alex's calm confidence was not arrogance. It was experience, intuition, and bravery combined. He did not promise victory. He promised careful, calculated action, and that was enough to restore their confidence. By midday, the enemy arrived. The ground shook under the march of armored vehicles and massive troops. Their weapons glinted in the sunlight as they advanced toward the city gates, ready to overwhelm anyone in their path. Most of the alien soldiers paled, but Alex remained composed. He quickly moved to set traps and ambush points. He directed his troops to positions that exploited the terrain, rooftops for snipers, narrow alleyways for choke points, and barricades to slow the enemy's advance. Every move was calculated to disrupt the enemy without unnecessary loss of life. The first wave of enemy soldiers entered the city. Alex struck immediately, using clever tactics rather than brute force. Smoke bombs obscured their vision. Barricades collapsed at precise moments. Rocks and debris created obstacles where none had existed. The enemy faltered, unsure how to respond. In the midst of this chaos, Alex noticed a squad of alien soldiers trapped on a rooftop by incoming fire. Without hesitation, he sprinted across the street, dodging enemy blasts with agile movements. He reached the soldiers, guided them down a hidden staircase, and brought them safely back to the main line. Sierra watched from her elevated platform, her glowing eyes following his every move. She was fascinated not only by his courage but also by his ability to adapt in real time. Where her soldiers would panic, he remained calm. Where her elite advisors would hesitate, he acted decisively. But the battle was far from over. Reports came in that a group of enemy commanders had infiltrated the city from a side entrance. They aimed to strike the citadel directly, putting Zira in danger. Alex's mind raced. He knew that if the Empress were harmed, the morale of the army would collapse entirely. "I need a volunteer team," he said, turning to the soldiers around him. "We're going to intercept the enemy before they reach the citadel. Follow my lead. Move fast, strike hard, and trust each other." Several soldiers stepped forward, inspired by his courage. Alex led them through a series of narrow passages, moving swiftly and silently. He positioned them in hidden alcoves and behind walls, carefully timing their attack. The enemy commanders entered the alleyways, confident in their approach. Alex signaled, and his team struck with precision. The enemy faltered, taken completely by surprise. Chaos erupted among their ranks as Alex's forces isolated and neutralized the threat. Once the danger had passed, Alex took a brief moment to breathe. He knew this was only the beginning. The main enemy force was still advancing, and supplies were low. The city could not hold forever without reinforcements, and those reinforcements were far away. He turned to his team. "We've bought time," he said, "but that's all. Keep moving, keep fighting. Protect the city, protect each other, and we survive. That's the plan." Zyra descended closer to the battlefield, letting her presence be known. The soldiers cheered quietly at the sight of their Empress, their spirits lifting further. She approached Alex and studied him with glowing eyes that held both curiosity and respect. "You continue to amaze me, human," she said softly. "Your courage, your intelligence, it surpasses anything I imagined. I must ask, why do you risk yourself so freely?" Alex paused, looking at the city around him. Buildings were scarred, streets were littered with debris, and soldiers were exhausted, yet they were still standing. "Because someone has to," he said simply. "Because if no one stands, everything is lost. Because courage isn't about being fearless, it's about doing what's right, even when you are afraid." Zira considered his words carefully. For centuries, she had ruled with strength, power, and calculated strategy. She had rarely encountered a being who inspired others merely by standing firm. Alex was more than a soldier. He was a symbol, a reminder that courage and intelligence could change the course of events even against impossible odds. The sound of approaching enemy vehicles broke her reflection. Alex quickly assessed the situation. The main assault force had reached the city's outer defenses. He moved immediately, positioning his soldiers to intercept them. Using narrow streets and hidden traps, he slowed the enemy advance. Smoke and debris created confusion, while his teams struck from unexpected angles. The enemy pressed forward relentlessly, but Alex remained calm. He used his environment, his understanding of the city's layout, and his tactical foresight to outmaneuver them at every turn. Even when faced with superior numbers, he found ways to protect his soldiers and maintain the city's defenses. At one point, an enemy vehicle broke through a barricade and headed straight toward the citadel. Alex sprinted, placing himself in its path. Using a combination of timing and skill, he managed to disable the vehicle without harming the soldiers inside. The alien soldiers watching him were stunned. No one had ever done anything like this before. By nightfall, the enemy had been forced to retreat once more. The city was battered, but it stood. Alex's small force had achieved the impossible, defending the capital against overwhelming odds. Zira approached him as he surveyed the streets, her expression unreadable but her eyes glowing with admiration. "You have done what I never thought possible," she said. The city owes its survival to you, and yet you remain humble. Why? Alex looked at the city, then at the exhausted soldiers around him. Because it's not about me, he said. It's about everyone who stands together. We protect each other, we fight together, and we survive. That's all that matters. Zira nodded slowly, a small smile crossing her features. She had learned much from this human. His courage, intelligence, and leadership had saved her city and inspired her soldiers in ways she had never imagined. For the first time, she understood that humans, though physically small, could possess a strength far greater than any weapon or army. As the night settled over Kareth, Alex and his soldiers prepared for the battles yet to come. Supplies would need replenishing, defenses would need strengthening, and the enemy would regroup for another attack. Yet despite the uncertainty, hope remained. Hope fueled by one human who refused to flee, one human whose courage had inspired an entire empire. And as Zira watched from her platform, she realized that Alex Wren was more than a soldier. He was a leader, a strategist, and a symbol of something greater. The human spirit, unyielding and extraordinary, capable of standing firm when all else seemed lost. The city slept uneasy but alive, its fate inextricably linked to the courage of one small human who had refused to run. And tomorrow the fight would continue. The sun rose slowly over the city of Kareth, casting long shadows across the battered streets. The calm of early morning was deceptive. From the distant horizon, the enemy's forces gathered once more. This time there was no hesitation, no minor skirmish. They came as a massive, unified army, determined to crush the capital and claim the Empress for themselves. Captain Alex Wren stood atop a rooftop overlooking the main avenue. His eyes scanned the horizon, noting every movement, every formation, every potential weakness. His mind worked swiftly, calculating, anticipating, and preparing for the impossible. Around him, alien soldiers moved with newfound confidence, inspired by his presence and guided by his strategies. Empress Zira appeared beside him, her glowing eyes fixed on the approaching forces. "Alex," she said, her voice calm but intense. "This is the greatest threat the city has ever faced. Are you ready?" Alex nodded without hesitation. "I'm ready," he replied. "We'll hold them. We'll protect the city, and we'll survive. Together." Zira studied him, noting the steady determination in his eyes. She had seen humans before, but none like this one. He was not just brave, he was inspiring. He was not just clever, he was relentless. And now, as the largest enemy force yet advanced toward them, she realized that their fate rested on this human who refused to yield. The battle began with a thunderous roar. Enemy machines rolled forward, their weapons firing, while infantry surged through the streets. Panic rippled through some of the alien soldiers, but Alex's presence quelled it. He moved quickly, giving clear instructions. "Hold the rooftops. Use the alleys. Don't let them push through the main avenue." His voice carried over the chaos, a steady beacon of guidance. The soldiers responded, placing themselves strategically. Alex directed snipers to hidden positions, arranged barricades to slow armored units, and coordinated small squads to intercept enemy leaders. His plan was not to confront the enemy head-on, but to weaken them, confuse them, and exploit every mistake. From above, Zira observed the human's genius in action. Where her armies had relied on force, Alex relied on intelligence. Where her soldiers would have panicked, Alex remained calm. Each decision, each movement was precise, calculated to maximize impact and minimize loss. The enemy pressed forward relentlessly. A massive armored vehicle surged through one of the side streets, aiming straight for the citadel gates. Alex reacted instantly. He led a small squad to intercept it, dodging debris and blasts. Using a combination of timing, explosives, and ingenuity, he disabled the vehicle, forcing it to skid sideways into a wall. The soldiers watching gasped. None had ever seen such skill executed so calmly under fire. In another part of the city, enemy troops tried to flank the defenders. Alex anticipated their movement, directing squads to cut off the advance. The soldiers, inspired by his foresight and calm courage, executed the plan perfectly. The enemy was forced to retreat in confusion. As the battle raged, Alex moved between the squads, always in the thick of the fight, guiding, encouraging, and leading by example. He did not carry fear, only determination. He did not rely on weapons alone, but on strategy, quick thinking, and the ability to inspire others to do the same. Syra, observing from a safe distance, felt a rare emotion: pride. She had ruled countless battles, yet never had she witnessed such a display of leadership. One small human had not only held the line, but had changed the very nature of the fight. His courage was contagious, his strategy flawless, and his dedication absolute. As night fell, the enemy made one final, desperate push. They concentrated their remaining forces, hoping to breach the citadel and capture Zira. Alex anticipated this. He positioned the soldiers in a series of traps and choke points, using the city itself as a weapon. Fire was set along strategic alleys. Barricades were ready to collapse on approaching forces, and hidden squads waited to strike at the critical moment. The final wave collided with Alex's forces. The streets erupted into chaos. Explosions shook the buildings, blinding smoke filled the air, and the sounds of combat echoed across the city. But Alex remained steady, guiding his soldiers, striking at enemy weak points, and inspiring his allies. At the heart of the chaos, a squad of enemy leaders broke through toward the citadel. Alex reacted immediately. He sprinted across the battlefield, dodging gunfire, weaving between debris and cutting a path toward the intruders. Using his intelligence and timing, he managed to isolate the enemy leaders, trapping them and forcing their surrender. The alien soldiers, seeing their human ally fight with such skill and bravery, rallied. They pressed forward, their fear replaced with confidence. The enemy's final push faltered and eventually collapsed. Exhausted and battered, the remaining invaders retreated, leaving the city in the hands of Alex and Zira. Silence fell over Kareth. The city was damaged, buildings scarred, streets filled with debris, but it had survived. Soldiers and civilians alike emerged from hiding, their eyes filled with awe and relief. They had witnessed something extraordinary. Alex stood atop a rooftop surveying the aftermath. His suit was torn, his body tired, but his spirit was unbroken. Around him, soldiers began to cheer quietly, a mix of relief and admiration. He had not only defended the city, he had inspired everyone who had fought alongside him. Zira descended to the battlefield, moving directly toward him. Her glowing eyes studied him with a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and respect. "You have done what none could have imagined," she said softly. "The city is safe because of your courage, your intelligence, and your determination." Alex shook his head slightly. "I didn't do it alone," he said humbly. "These soldiers fought with me. We protected each other. That's why we survived." Zira smiled faintly. "You have shown that humans are not weak," she said. "They can be leaders, strategists, and inspirations. You have proven the potential of your species in ways I never thought possible." The soldiers around them cheered, and Zira turned her gaze to them. "Today you have all shown bravery and loyalty, and you have learned something vital. Courage and intelligence can overcome fear, even against overwhelming odds." Alex looked at the city, scarred but standing. "This is what we fight for," he said. "Not glory, not fame. We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight because it is the right thing to do." The Empress nodded slowly. She had ruled for centuries, yet she had never encountered such a being. Alex Wren, a human, had changed not only the outcome of the battle, but also her understanding of what it meant to be strong, brave, and worthy of respect. That night, the city celebrated quietly, knowing the war was not completely over, but that hope remained alive. Alex moved among the soldiers, offering encouragement, guidance, and reassurance. He had led by example, showing that courage, intelligence, and determination could turn even the most desperate situations into triumph. Zira stood beside him, looking at the human who had risked everything for her and her city. She realized that she had not only found a protector but also a friend. Alex's bravery had inspired an empire, and his presence had reminded her that strength was not measured by power or numbers, but by courage, determination, and the willingness to stand firm when all else seemed lost. For the first time in her long reign, she felt something rare, genuine admiration and trust for a human. Alex Wren had proven that even the smallest, most fragile beings could change the course of history if they had the courage to stand their ground. As the city slept, still recovering from the day's battles, Alex and Zira stood together atop the highest spire of the citadel. The stars shone above them and the city stretched below, safe and alive. You have done more than survive, Zira said softly. You have changed the way I see humans forever. Alex smiled faintly, tired but resolute. I didn't do it for recognition, he said. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Standing when others fall. That's all any of us can do, Zira nodded. Then perhaps the universe is fortunate to have humans like you, she whispered. And in that moment, as the wind carried the faint scent of smoke and victory across the city, it became clear. One human, small but unyielding, had stood his ground when all others fled. He had inspired courage in an entire army, changed the course of a war, and reminded an empire and an empress that the human spirit was extraordinary, unbreakable, and worthy of respect. The city of Kareth would rebuild. Its soldiers would remember this day, and somewhere in the stars above, other worlds would hear of the human who refused to run. Captain Alex Wren had stood his ground, and in doing so, he had proven that courage, intelligence, and heart could defy any odds, inspire any empire, and leave a legacy that would endure for generations.